All right, so I'm gonna call the regular board meeting for the East Umatilla Fire and Rescue District to order at 8:03 p.m. Roll call, Chris Williams.
Mark Albert.
Greg Phillips.
Chris Werland.
DB.
So has everybody had a chance to look over the agenda? Are there any edits or additions?
Do we need to talk about the volunteer policy, or if we have one? Sent the email out today.
Let's make that number 3 under new business.
So I have a 300.
You already got a 3?
A quick book request.
Oh, okay, then we'll make it number 4. Any other ads?
Move to approve the amended agenda.
Okay, we have a motion by Greg to approve the amended agenda
Second.
and a second by Mark.
What did we have it number 4?
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Volunteer policy.
Are you in favor, Matt?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Public comment. Okay, hearing none, we'll move to reviewing the financial information. So I just to review things I brought up in the prior meeting, it looks like the risk reduction labor got put in the wrong, billed to the wrong entity, so that needs to be looked at. We have a little maintenance charge that got billed to the medic district for brush truck. We had $27,000 in outside district services. Do we know what made that up?
Jessica's wage. Part of it.
She
I
worked
want
a
that
lot
job.
last
I believe the if we have contractors come and work on things, like the 50% payment for the pump, I think came in.
Would you be able to send us a detail on that,
Yeah.
like next week?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other question I had, so if you look at the P&L by class, and then you look at just the regular P&L, the total expense does not match. So we have a total expense of $176,468 on the P&L by class, but on the regular P&L, it's $184,296. So I'm curious why those two aren't the same.
So
I'll shut down.
Thank you.
So on the P&L by class, we have a total expense of 176, but on the regular P&L, it's 184. And the run, I mean, within 3 minutes of each other on the same day, they ought to come up with the same number.
So this is likely where the problem is. Personnel. Or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, personnel.
Jessica, I do think that the pump, the 50% payment to A1 Plumbing, I do believe that was coded for outside district services. If that helps justify what you're looking for. Or what Since they got a pump from Singapore, whether it's from they demand to have to pay with money.
Oh, gotcha. So anyway, I'll let Jessica work through that. That doesn't have to hold up the meeting, but I I'll turn it back over to you, Matt, to run the show, but I can't prove the financials until those questions are resolved. That question is resolved. Why the reports don't say the same though.
So we can table the financials for a moment and we can come back around to that one. So let's move on to payment of the bills.
I would move we pay the bills.
I'll second it.
Okay. Where were we? Payment of bills. It's been moved by Mark. Second by who? By Chris. Those in favor?
I
Those opposed? Minutes from last meeting.
move we approve the recording as our official minutes from last meeting.
Okay. Yes, second by Greg. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. There's a 4 added on.
Yeah, well.
I probably should add a couple more ID with Pendleton
Oh,
and the resolution, the rules.
we can
Make that happen. Okay. Yeah, because new business number 2 and old business number 1 are essentially the same thing. No, yeah. So old business retirement benefits due to the 5 members, that was a 6% in lieu of PERS prior to going into PERS. It went into OSGP. The accounts weren't set up. An update on that is all of the math has been worked out. All of the payments haven't been made yet, but they are about to be made, should be made within the next, I won't say it'll be done tomorrow, but it should be done this next week. I believe two of the individuals don't work for us any longer, and they will have to, the only legal way to do that is to cut the check. So there will be 2 checks written. The rest of it will be deposited into their OSGP accounts. If they're not set up, they need to be set up. If they're already set up, it'll go in there. So that'll all happen within this next year.
So do we owe them like a fee because we didn't do it when they were supposed to?
Yes, the accounts weren't set up like they were supposed to be set up. We cannot set up those accounts for them. They had to set those accounts up as employees. And so we factored in, as it's an employer, not deduction, it's an employer paid contribution. They go into, I believe it's a life path accounts that are in there based on estimated retirement ages for those individuals. So that's where the contribution will go. And we factored in interest based on what they would have contributed, what those accounts received that year, and added that onto the totals. So there will be, this is what you made that year. This is what your 6% contribution should have been. This is the interest on your 6% contribution that fund made that year. Here it is going forward.
Why do we have to pay a penalty and give them all this extra if they're the ones that didn't set up the account? Where does the liability fall to us because they didn't do what they were told?
I am looking at this as so that's a fair question. If I failed to set up an account that wasn't done and had money owed to me, and if we figured that out, that would be the next question I would have is what about the interest that was lost when I didn't have this investment? And so knowing that there is some fault on the behalf of the employee for not setting up the account, there is also, I'll say there's some fault on the district for not following through to make sure that was done, because we're sitting there wanting to make this
Right.
contribution. I look at it as, we
So
know what we owe
made
them.
Interest on,
We paid interest on the principal that they would have had deposited. So if the money was deposited in there, it would have grown by X amount
okay,
for that year. And we've added that to the payment that we're making to try to make things right and make the employees whole. So that is,
did we make that interest by leaving it in, we'll call it our savings account, wherever we did?
I don't
We
know.
don't know. Okay,
I don't know.
What kind of money are you looking at?
The total payment, for all of the employees is $18,000. Ish, 18 and change. So it's not exactly. It's roughly 18,000. So that will happen probably next week. Just trying to get this done this fiscal off of our
yeah,
stuff, and I look at it as an investment to try to make the employees as whole as we can make them.
okay,
Like, we can't do anything more. We can't get the money that they didn't earn. We're just trying to make this as right as we can make it, given the circumstances.
my other question, I guess, would be these two that no longer work for us. If I pay them out $10,000, because it's not going to their retirement, are we supposed to pay taxes on that?
We don't.
Okay, so we'll give them whatever at the end of the year, and they'll have to pay taxes on that.
Those people will. They'll
Okay.
have some tax due on that.
Okay,
Unless
Yes.
they invest it in a retirement account, that's how they can
Okay.
avoid
There's
it.
probably a way to do that. I'm not a tax lawyer, so.
I just don't want any more fallback on us. If this is what we need to be done. Okay,
Understood, and that's why I think paying them for the interest that they didn't get on that is a way of showing that,
Good steward.
yes,
Mhm.
okay,
we're trying to do everything we can to make folks
okay.
whole.
And Matt, if I can, when the district administration found this out. Once we did, we reported to Matt, and then Matt said, have him turn and take a look at it, and we did, we spent, 3 and some high change, almost $4,000 to have the attorney take a look at it and explain this is what should happen. And when the idea of interest came up, he didn't say one way or the other, but he said it would be a good faith thing to go ahead and do this and make them as whole as possible. So when I forwarded that to Matt, it was just.
Yeah.
He spoke with Anita.
So. We have any other skeletons in our closet?
Not as of July 1st.
So I May 21st.
I mean, we've had to deal with the retirement thing and this, and overtime. Do we know of any other issues that are out there that could bite us?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay,
Okay, so after looking at it, it looks like I have $67.41. In supplies that is showing on this report that's not on here. I can look into that for you. But the bulk of the discrepancy is in payroll, which I don't manage.
right, but why would it be different between the two reports? That's the crazy thing.
It would have something to do with how payroll is being entered, which isn't something that I have control over.
Well, could you ask whoever does?
I can,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, do you want this back?
I know if you've scribbled notes on it, you can keep it. I just want the pen back.
Fair enough.
Fine. One right here.
Thank you.
Okay, so retirement benefits, issue number 1, old business. I think if there are any other questions.
No.
I think we're okay. We'll move on to the water pump update.
So just real quickly, A1 was a low bid. They asked for 50% up front. We looked at it and then they came back and told us that was gonna be a how many weeks?
6 week.
We're waiting for some exotic pump from, I don't know, Singapore to be built. I don't know. I was under the impression we were given a price on something that was literally on the shelf and it could be snapped right in. I was thinking 3 days, we should have this done. But as it is right now, what have we paid, $6,800 or something like that? And we still have no pump. Watching the guys try to wash the rigs is a little humiliating side, but we're in this long process of fixing it.
I have been in contact with them and that's what they're telling us, is there's a 6 week waiting period.
So we're looking at probably July now before it's installed.
That was probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so it's possible.
And we'll make sure the invoice they give us is dated for this fiscal year, so it won't co-mingle across. We'll make sure that.
Well, we're on a cash basis, so it's whenever we pay it.
And
We're not on accrual.
So. I've been told differently with that point. That's good.
Okay. Any other questions on the water pump? Report safety fuels, vehicles, chiefs.
You should have those in front of you.
Any questions there?
Just real quick on the fuels reduction, I want to throw a little bit of a bone for Jessica. She done a pretty good job in, communicating with the OSFM. And that grant, the amount of money we have left in that grant, we've got an extension of the grant. Instead of it's supposed to be done by July 1, it's through December 31st.
Through
And
December.
we're about now with the funds that we average in, we can buy
Up to $75,000 worth of equipment.
a chipper and a shredder. So, well, of course, it would be best to try and stretch those dollars to get boots on the ground, which is going to be the best results. But at the same time, if we can buy the equipment that's going to make them more efficient and safer on the ground, then we're looking for that as well.
First thing we see.
No, we've provided options.
I go, oh, this is what they don't know.
Well, but they're feeding stuff in and it's kicking it back out of the one that they have right now.
Excuse me. My name is Jeremiah. I am one of the field crew workers right now. Colby Hayes was supposed to send a report to you guys on request of Andy, I believe. Or Chief Hayes. Unfortunately we got a call, so he's out and unavailable. However, I did have him send you guys a email regarding the updated report. He did chop these guys together for you guys. This is a written plan and an explanation of what we're currently doing. Along with some of the current limitations that the chipper in particular is presenting. He also put together these photos, which I'll pass around, of one of the current properties or one of the past properties that we have finished before and after photos. With that being said, we have finished 2 properties as of this fiscal year and are currently working on a 3rd. We have also added 6 new properties to the list the previous had. I think the list is somewhere in the 18 property range. So 6 added on top of that. We're currently working through some issues with the chipper and have priced out a new chipper. The problem we're having with the old chipper is it's taking, I have a little report here, little written statement about the limitations of the current chipper we have. The chipper we currently have is only able to take up to about a 3-inch diameter branch and chip that into semi-small pieces and chunk out other brush. However, if that brush is wet or overly dry, it will jam the barrel of the chipper, halting all of its progress. And the crew is currently spending about 50% of our time battling that and getting it up and running again. If we were able to purchase this new chipper, that we're currently looking at, it'd almost entirely alleviate that problem. Allowing us to be a little bit more efficient.
How much is that chipper?
So the new chipper is right around $14,000.
Yes, that's one of them that we've been looking at. It also includes, a warranty for 2 years, free delivery, and it comes with extra equipment like, storage equipment. It has a tarp that comes with it, extra blades for the barrel, extra belts. And it is the one that the fuels crew would prefer to have is a towable unit, so we don't need a trailer or a dolly or anything.
I have a question, but how big are these properties that we're dealing with? Just a regular size or huge?
Again, that's why we said property, he said properties and not houses. For example, the Langdon Lake property has, I believe it was an estimated 50 structures on it. That we
So-
would need to cut on.
But how much acreage?
So we're only here to cut up to 100 yards from the structure. 100 feet, sorry. 100
Okay.
feet from the structure. So that's typically small brush, and limbing trees.
Lemon?
Limbing, cutting
Oh,
off
limbing.
excess branches and clearing a fire break between the structure
Okay.
and brush.
Okay.
So we're looking,
Anything below 6 inches in diameter that we're following. But with the current chipper, only chipping 3 inches in diameter and below.
It's
Okay.
really home grade, the one we have is a home grade.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not, it was never done. Wood use. So, yeah.
The sheer, especially with how underhandled a lot of the properties that we're going to are, the sheer volume of plant growth that we're having to chip is.
What happens to the chips after it goes through the machine?
So, it depends on the property owner. A lot of them prefer just to have it be piled in a burn pile or slash pile. And they'll burn it at a later date on a green day.
Okay.
Some
So we
properties,
don't clean that up.
no, not at the current moment. We don't have the resources to do that.
Okay.
Some properties want us to spread them out over a garden or something like that, which is a feasible option. But with the purchase of this new chipper, we could potentially even not, well, potentially be able to haul off this debris. It would allow us to direct it into a containment object, whether that's a trailer or some sort of dumpster. We moved it up against the side of it.
Have you guys contacted any tree service companies to see a recommendation that they have on the equipment? I mean, they're professionals, they're doing this all the time, just an idea?
As far as I know, I haven't been aware of that, but
These
So,
Vermeer, Vermeer and Morbark, some of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
They're $30,000 range, but
Yeah.
those are the ones that last forever, so it kind of depends on how much the one you spend, but you're getting into a. Yeah, we need to do that.
Yeah.
We do that.
You get up into the 50,000 range, and they're quite large too.
And that is another thing we have to be aware of, because you start getting into the issue of, is it big enough to get down some of those back roads, and is it heavy enough to fence?
a lot of what we're going down and doing is on single track dirt roads up on that mountain. And this chipper would be just about the perfect size where we get down a lot of those without any problems. One of the issues that our chipper has is going down those dirt roads. Like we said, it's a residential chipper, something that the homeowner usually uses. We're putting a lot of miles on those axles and tires and belts.
Actually, Bennett, if you look at it.
And
There's no suspension in it.
yeah, we
It's
put the
all
frame.
axle. It's meant for like under 45 miles an hour kind of stuff. Yeah, it's not a real trailer.
Can we sell it?
After the grant program ends, I believe you have a waiting period, but it can be eventually sold.
Not the new one, the old one.
yeah. So you would have to wait for the grant program to end and then the agreed upon period of time, and then it could be sold.
Thank you. So that's if we buy a new one on the grant.
Yes.
What about the one we have now? Is it?
That's what I was saying.
That is purchased on grant.
It is purchased on a grant, so we would have to wait until the grant period was over and
Sell
then a
the one we
certain
have.
amount of time to sell the one that we currently have.
So it-
Because we bought it with grant money.
We bought a chipper with interest, we weren't allowed to use grant money, so.
Yeah. So you bought what you could afford, and it's undersized. So that's, I'll just summarize. The chipper that we have is undersized. We were looking at a one that's better, more productive. We have the ability to use the grant funds that we have from OSFM to purchase said chipper up to an X amount. Eventually, after the period expires, another 2 years, whatever it is, we could sell the old one, have the new one. We could even sell the new one in a few years if we aren't using it anymore, etc. And the one that you're looking at is roughly 14,000.
Yes, yes, sir.
So I think, is that the summary?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And how much do we have in the grant we can spend?
75,000.
75,000.
Okay.
Is that for staffing or just for the?
No, that's just for equipment.
So we have additional money for staffing.
Yes. There's currently $90,000 left in the grant.
There's 90,000 in the grant. You can spend up to 75 on equipment, which would leave you 15 for staffing.
Well, we're not planning on spending the full amount we're just planning on the chipper, and potentially a trailer, which would only be around $5,000.
So
The rest of that would go to staffing, and currently they're costing roughly 15,000 per month.
yeah, July, August, September.
So parts of those red flag months can be paid by the wildfire staffing. So that stretches the risk even farther.
But they can't run saws during.
There's a period of time they can't run chainsaws and they can't run in equipment.
Small
So-
case engines.
So as you said, during those red flags, Oregon Department of Forestry does put a red flag warning on chainsaw use. However, Colby did meet with one of their superiors, and as long as we have a truck that has a supplied water source, such as a brush truck, they will allow us to still continue to use chainsaws.
To operate past with the waiver.
Yes.
But some of that will could potentially get restricted based on industrial fire conditions. So there are some more opportunities afforded to industrial fire restrictions, operations versus just a landowner just, doing stuff in their own, yards. So there is a window that this could operate longer, but there is potential for that window to be shut down as well. But I mean, figure that's 4 months. You got 4 months work, June, July, August, September. You start getting the snow, the other stuff. So you got 4 months, 15,000, you got 60,000 plus 14,75. You're still under your margin. So I think the math matters.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't,
part of the reason we picked the one we did. Others that were within the same horsepower range, were getting up into $27,000 or $28,000.
And how long do we get to have this? Because the pump takes 6 weeks to come to us. How long to get this, if this is the one we choose?
Tomorrow.
So I believe they said 6 weeks
Oh, wow.
for delivery, but
Ooh.
it's
So we need to make a decision ASAP before
Fire season.
fire
early.
season hits us.
also, they include lift gate service, so we wouldn't have to bring in a forklift to take it off the truck.
So you're ordering this online, there isn't somebody in Hermiston that's selling this?
Right. The ones in Hermiston or Pendleton, there are some in Pendleton, but again, those are a bit more expensive.
so
Decision board or operations, so make this decision.
The expenditure.
the expenditure amount.
Which
will be-
unit to buy it?
Just.
Yeah.
So I'm fully supportive of the chipper and getting the right thing, right? And it seems like it's more of I'd rather spend a little more on the right chipper than be doing the same thing next year. Oh, this thing isn't quite undersized enough, and if we would have spent, 20,000 instead of 14,000, we would have, 40% less breakdown. So, and I'm also more of a fan of grabbing something you can grab off the shelf and not, I would like to see one that you could tow, so I don't think you just go pick it up and hook it on.
There's gotta be one on the ground someplace.
Yeah,
There has to be.
I mean, because if you push it out to. I mean, that would be after the 4th of July now. You've lost a big window for work. If.
Well, they're still working on the other one. They're just fighting the
Right.
work. So whether we order it 6 weeks from now and it shows up, or whether it takes, 2 more weeks to hunt for one that's sitting in Hermiston or Walla Walla or LeGrand or wherever.
I'll
that
drive
we
to
could-
Portland.
Yeah, I mean,
Should we authorize up to an amount that they can spend? And then they find the best, the operations.
I think that's probably a good way to do that if you got.
You're gonna want one with wheels.
It does have wheels, yeah,
It's a true.
You got 90,000 left in the grant,
approximately, yeah.
approximately. 60 minimum for covering the staff. They're running 15,000 a month. If you went 5 months, that'd be 75. That leaves you 15. So 60,000 for staff will leave you 30,000. So that give you 4 months of working, June, July, August, September.
Okay.
And that'd give you a budget of up to 30,000 roughly to buy a chipper. If you came in less than that, then yeah, more to spend on folks, but that at least leaves you a reserve to keep the crews working.
Okay. And so you would like to look locally first?
Well, I would like to look in the and I would call the footprint like Tri-Cities, Baker
okay.
to,
Even Portland.
Yeah.
maybe even
Okay.
Portland. I mean, there's a handful of folks probably sitting at this table who make a run to Portland on Spokane, pick something
Yep.
up.
Yeah.
Keep it in Oregon, so we don't have to pay tax.
Yeah, there is that, but I mean, there's probably 19 of them sitting over in Boise, right? So if you cast a big enough net, yeah, if we don't wanna pay tax, we don't have to, but
Right.
let's,
Road trip.
Yeah.
Yep,
yeah.
So.
us girls,
Um,
get the boys.
I move that we approve up to 30,000 be allocated towards a chipper purchase.
Second.
The well, it's not limit, chipper / trailer, right?
Equipment, yeah.
Equipment,
Equipment.
and preferably a towable model that meets your intent. So I've amended your resolution or your motion. Sorry.
Just note though, this is just in the discussion piece. If you haul away chips, you have to do something with them. We don't want to get in the place where we're paying to dispose of chips.
Right.
So.
You only fit so many right now.
Yeah.
And have a community.
We don't want to look like a dump here.
So let me, so there's a motion, it's been amended, and I would say, we would spend up to $30,000 of the grant,
Yes,
money.
correct.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
right, just to be specific.
Yep.
Of the OSFM grant, up to that amount for a chipper, trailer, and the associated equipment with that, not to exceed 30,000. So
Okay.
is there a motion for that?
Yes, so moved.
Okay. Moved by Chris.
It still has to be by Greg.
It is. Absolutely is.
Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Anything else on the fuel support? Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks for your work. This is
Yes.
great. Thank you.
Going to new business, OSHA consult on April 30th and the challenge program.
So the OSHA consult it was really positive. They saw the challenges that we have with our multiple stations. And, we just haven't received the report yet. We were told it would probably take about 2 weeks. They were here on April 30th and we still haven't seen it. So as soon as we do, we will all, well, I would presume they will all get it. And then some of the things that will show up on the report, they talked about it and it's been mitigated. For instance, the ambulance building over in Athena, there was 3 things that they said, hey, this is a problem, this is a problem. They've been fixed already. So as I was talking earlier, I think it was Chris, we're gonna get hit on the extinguishers. So that's, I confessed I did not have them in my front yard, and new extinguishers that are inspected monthly and tested. yearly. I'm pretty sure it's yearly. That's gonna come up.
Yeah, we need to do our own monthly inspection.
Correct.
And then yearly, we have to have somebody come in.
Test.
Correct.
Test a tag.
Test and tag charge.
Yeah.
And there's. Plenty, Northfield does it. There's
Exactly.
two
Oh,
others
yeah,
that do it.
yeah. And then the challenge program that we are in, I sent an email to Warren Espinoza to ask him, hey, can you give me a summary? And he sent me a link and then I forwarded it to you. So that link explains the challenge program quite a bit. And especially for an organization our size, it's perfect. It's really perfect.
Okay, any questions on that? I've eliminated number 2, since we've got that on the other part, payment of the 6% OSGP. Which brings us to item 3, QuickBooks request.
So Sherry was emailing back and forth with Chris. I just copied all the emails and that's what the collection in front of you. Chris is up to speed on, but it's mostly just if I'm getting this wrong, say something, please. I think that Sherry is advocating that we make some kind of change to a version that we can have multiple people log in at the same time to either make changes or look and get information. I think that's what that's about to. Chris, is that right?
The last letter says it's her understanding we have the enterprise gold level of the software. If the district is paying for an online version, she's not aware of it. But they can't both log in at the same time. So she's basically asking for two users.
Which makes sense, because when they're trying to do the payroll side, and if we're on the
Yeah.
book side, you can't both be
Absolutely.
in there. And so did we get a quote on the additional user login?
I
that
thought
in
we
there?
did, but
I thought it
you
was
didn't
there.
print that one off.
Well,
So I got a verbal quote from someone from QuickBooks. And they said that adding a new user would cost roughly $1,000 a year. But we needed to understand that adding a second user meant we would need to put QuickBooks on a server rather than having it on the computer.
Well.
And the reason for that is because any changes that would be made, because both users could be logged in at the same time, those changes would have to be live, immediate. And so the server is required.
I have a suggestion. I think instead of running QuickBooks desktop, we should go QuickBooks on. And then you can have two people working at the same time.
You can have as many people as you want.
That would be my, and
There is some difference in running the program, so there would be a small learning curve, but it makes a lot more sense, yeah.
So that kind of changes stuff midstream a little bit if they're already going down the path, but I don't want to keep beating on the source. We want to solve the problem. If online suits that need and we can do it for roughly the same ballpark as what we're paying now, plus another $1,000 a year for.
It may even be less expensive because you don't have to pay per user, but you do have to pay per book. And because Medic and Fire are two separate books, you would have two separate subscriptions.
Right. Yes.
So it would come down to which one is more cost effective.
And well, I think
You'd
at this
also have
point
to-
it's, yeah, and we'd have to factor in the server, and I don't know that you can call a machine a server, so you could both log in the same, one logs in virtually with.
They would also have to have access into it, which
Yeah,
they don't,
which
which
we
we're not on
don't.
the same network.
Yeah, so I think I don't think we need a motion or anything, but I think the direction would be to explore the online and see if we
Okay.
can.
Do you want me to do a cost comparison?
Well, the cost comparison will be helpful, but
Okay.
really, I don't see a way that the desktop version works to
It
have
would
another
be,
login.
it would be difficult.
not with you here and them in Pendleton,
Yeah.
like you said.
Plus it takes care of backups.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We still want to keep a copy occasionally for the cloud.
I think it was Joanne that liked the desktop. 'cause
She
it
just-
was more
She preferred it, yeah.
old school.
It was more familiar.
And at that time, we were
Okay,
all payroll is
Is this
currently in
your-
one building, so whether
Right,
it's, they
yeah,
need to be
right.
in two places.
And eventually, Quicken is going
Yes.
to get away from doing the
Okay.
desktop. They won't
So-
buy it.
That's true.
is
They'll
that
fix it
now
again.
a year? That's
It is
per
what it
year.
is.
Yes, but it would be more than that because this was an introductory. They gave us a,
That's about like 5 years.
Brand new person gets better deals.
yeah, and it was prorated too because we just paid for QuickBooks Desktop for the next year last month. Okay. If we did decide to go to desktop, that would of course be prorated and
Desktop.
we just paid for the
Oh,
next
just
year of
paid.
desktop, yeah.
I bet they would give us some sort of credit if we.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they would.
The quote that she sent out was a little over 2,500.
Per year.
Yes, but they gave us a discount because we were a new person and then. Yeah, so we're looking, I think originally it was like 3,000.
Yeah. So we're probably in the same ballpark. I guess I would see if the. See if the online's an option, see if that will meet yours and Sherry's or HR's and our needs.
Okay.
Clerk and
Payroll.
HR.
Clerk and HR.
Yeah.
HR payroll, I guess be more payroll than HR. And if that will suffice and that will work, then we'll probably go that route.
Okay.
I don't see it being a price point. That's huge.
Basically needs to happen, so
So keep,
get her done.
I was told that version 23 is being stopped at the end of the month. Fortunately, we're on version 24. But he did tell me, I don't know if it was a sales pitch, but he did tell me that
yes,
they are working towards going to online,
it was a sale.
most likely.
Well, that's, yeah, we're going there anyway. Might as well fight forward, so.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on QuickBooks?
Nope.
So do we want to move forward or get a quote and then move forward?
Well, I mean, if the quote is more than the threshold that folks can get, then yeah, we would need to approve that, but if it's less than that, then. Get
I
it
think
done.
it's what, 10,000 and this may only be 3,
I think it was 5, anyway,
5,
yeah,
okay,
so I thought we talked about bumping that about. That's a different problem.
okay.
Five,
And just have to limp it along for another month until we. No, but, if you find out next week, I don't, unless it exceeds that threshold,
Just do it.
just do it.
Okay.
Get her done.
Volunteer policy.
So I have some concerns. Do we even have a policy? That's one question. Do we have a policy that we're not following? That's the next question. I guess my concern comes that we fought to get this this volunteer on doing things. And he's been doing it for several months. And now he's been told that there's some issue with the policy, so he can't come back and volunteer until it's figured out. So what's going on with the policy? What do we need to do as a board to get this approved? So that this young man can come back, because we fought hard to get him on as a volunteer. And because right now, as far as I know, he's the only volunteer that has been asked not to come back until this policy has been figured out.
How many volunteers do we have?
I mean, we started as a volunteer fire department, right?
and then we hired from within, yes.
But so why is there an issue having a volunteer?
I didn't bring that there was a problem with the policy, and I have not said that anybody can.
So I guess. Let's just get it out. What are we hearing? Who's telling this person that they can't volunteer?
So, and I've had conversations with Shauna with regards to Tristan.
Right.
And
There's been a volunteer policy that was in place that has been removed. That is my understanding. I was unaware of that. And I have a volunteer policy written I wanted to implement it, but HR is like, we need to look at it. And as far as the HR services that we have, and they have it, it's going through their process. I'm waiting on that.
So when did we vote to remove our volunteer policy?
Yeah. That'd be a question I would have, unless it got pulled by HR, but I don't think they have the.
Well, and then my next
I
question
don't
would be,
think they
when
have
did,
the
when
authority
did we give HR the authority? Cause I think this board has unanimously said that we do not want Pendleton to have authority over our decision making. And so
I
I,
think you're mixing things there, so let's not go down that route. That we have contracted with them to do HR
Right.
and payroll, and when it comes to HR and payroll matters, like, we can't supersede them as a board
Mhm.
because we don't like something that follows HR law,
mhm.
payroll law, et cetera. We
Right.
just can't say, oh,
No, I get
we
that.
don't
I
want
get
you to
that.
follow that. We want you to follow what we say. So that's not quite accurate. But
Andy, would you grab the policy manual?
yeah, back to the policy manual. I don't think they have the ability to supersede policy in general, other than like, hey, this actually doesn't fit with
Mhm.
this law, or this doesn't fit with this, right?
Right.
That's where I could see that. But I don't see them removing our policies from me.
And policy additions or subtractions occurs with.
Right, and that's where I'm running into this, cause I mean, I've been trying to help, I've helped get this kid on in the volunteer, you know,
Well,
and he,
There's 4, why is only 1 being told no?
Again, I have no idea. I didn't know that.
Well, I think this is so, forgive me if I'm wrong, but this is a separate. There was separate stuff in order to get this person in, I believe, and it's not just somebody who raised their hand and walked in and said, I want to volunteer at the fire department, I want to be a firefighter, et cetera, right? This came through a different mechanism. Is that accurate?
to a degree,
So, and cause and I don't wanna get into the specifics or detail, right, on the individual, but it wasn't quite black and white of like, yeah, we're gonna put you through firefighter training, we're gonna do all this stuff, and you're gonna be a volunteer and ride on a fire truck.
right,
This wasn't a volunteer to go that route, this was a volunteer to do other things, right? We had to get placed, we had to go through all these other hoops.
I mean,
maybe. I don't know the right terminology.
there are still some things that he's been doing with the department that is no different than anybody else. He's been going through the wildland firefighter training. You know, and far as I've heard, he's been doing a great job. I haven't heard anything different. I mean, this kid got the call to come out and fill sandbags during the flooding, and I happened to be in Pendleton, and I brought him here, and he was so amped up and excited to actually get to do something, and you know, to turn around and you know, kind of crush his spirit by saying, I'm sorry, there's some issues, and now you can't do it until we get this figured out. So, I mean, on one hand, yes, there are some differences, but on the other hand, we shouldn't be treating him any different than any other volunteer.
No, but this isn't well, I guess I might be confused on the situation, whether is this a volunteer firefighter? That's their job, just like every other volunteer, and when we got a call, volunteers come in and staff trucks and go to fires? Or is this volunteering in another capacity?
It would probably be considered volunteering in another capacity,
Okay,
but I don't see it any different whether it's somebody who's volunteering to come in and wash the trucks every week, or volunteering to come in and be a cook for the folks every week. Not saying that we have those people volunteering, but any volunteer doing any job here, I think, is a benefit to this agency. And for one volunteer to get singled out, that's where I have an issue. And that's where my concern is. And if the policy is there's issues, we as the board, I think we need to get this figured out, or have it figured out and get it approved, so that we can start having more volunteers come on board. If this is an issue.
and I agree, but we can't be lumping a volunteer firefighter in the process that we have as a fire department with a
May I very quickly?
different scenario.
All volunteer applications that I've received are stopped. Volunteer firefighters, anything. I've stopped any volunteers from coming in. I've said, no, not until this policy is in place. It's not just one person being singled out. It's everybody. I've had people come to me and say, where are we at with this? Where are we at? It's with HR. They're going through it. No volunteers, period. At this point in time.
There's probably some validity to HR looking at a volunteer policy based on hiring practices, not hiring, it's not hiring practices, but work conditions and all the other stuff that comes with that. I think we're mixing our volunteer, the verbiage of volunteer, we're mixing throughout this. Because this is a one-off deal and not a standard firefighter volunteer. I think we're in agreement there.
He's working to become.
Okay,
So
so we can't lump the two together. I think we're lumping the two together and they're really separate issues. But if we've halted all volunteers until the policy gets settled with HR, which we still haven't figured out why they halted our policy.
We can't even find the policy.
So
Somebody wanna
Andy, we
call
are
Harvey?
treating everybody the same right now?
yes,
Okay.
I will treat everybody the same,
Okay.
no difference.
Okay, that was not, I guess that was not the understanding. However it was
There's been-
communicated.
yeah, there's been, I feel there's been some misunderstanding on some things, and I have asked for clarification on things, so I understand clearly.
Okay.
And it's everybody, if somebody's coming in saying, I wanna be a volunteer firefighter, I'm like, okay, great. We're working on a volunteer policy, we'll take your application, as soon as that policy comes through, we will.
Okay,
Start.
that's new application. I'm talking about the ones that we have currently on the books.
Volunteers,
Yes,
I don't even know that we have any volunteers on the books.
Dave just said we have 4.
We have four?
I understand if we halted bringing them in until we get things figured out, but any current volunteers that are already on the book should be operating under the old policy. And I don't think that the policy should have been removed until the new one is there to take its place. That's my
Okay,
understanding.
Right,
So,
you know, I'm erring on the side of caution because I bring stuff in and I'm told, we don't have this, and I'm really, you know, I'm putting this, trying to figure out where everything's at, not
Right.
trying to stop anybody from doing anything.
I think for me, as long as it's a pause on all volunteers and we're not singling out one person, then I'm okay.
I don't single
As long as
anybody
it-
out. I've actually
We're
encouraged,
treating all volunteers the same right now.
I've encouraged anybody, I was on a volunteer department where somebody had a physical disability.
Mhm.
And they said, I want to volunteer. And I said, why don't you? And they had an arm that was disabled. And I said, why is that stopping? You have things you can do. And I left the department and I found out later that he ended up volunteering. So,
But it's just strange to me that not too long ago, we had volunteer firefighters, we don't have volunteer politics. And if we don't have one, does Pendleton have a copy of one that we can work over and adopt, or?
Yeah.
Like, it seems like a problem we need to fix if we don't have one.
Well, yeah, we've always had volunteers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it's just assumed.
And I
because we're
get-
volunteer fire department.
If you
maybe,
don't have a driver's license, you can't drive a truck, but you can still wash a truck.
well, but like I said,
But,
I mean, across the board, that's where I'm at, is if we've got other volunteers. The unfortunate thing is you get a major fire, now you have volunteer firemen that can't come in and work because we don't have a policy to cover it.
Yeah,
I mean, is that not
if it's
how
if
it
it's
should be
all-
across the board?
Yes, if it's all the same and lumped under one volunteer policy, I think it's the fact that we're using the volunteer word. And volunteer firefighter is a very common term, and we're also talking about volunteering in other capacities that aren't necessarily a firefighter. And so I guess there's some semantics here on how somebody, and I'm not saying that people can't contribute, and this is like, we're going down a rabbit trail. So if we have a policy that allows us to have volunteer firefighters and allows us to have volunteers in general do other things other than firefighting, then we should have both if we need both, and one if we can umbrella into one. And I'm still trying to figure out why we don't. Well, do I need to call HR tomorrow and figure out why we don't have a volunteer policy right now.
It's not on
just not
them, it's on us.
Well, if,
Why was it not done way back when you guys went through all of them?
well, and that's,
If we
I
pull it out
wonder if we didn't even
because-
know we needed one because that's what we were at the time, right? We
Yeah.
said we have volunteers, it's just assumed, and we don't have volunteers for other reasons other than to be a volunteer firefighter. And there's standards and requirements and all the stuff that they have to go through in order to be a volunteer, training, yada, 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 right? So I just.
I mean, I get what you're
I
saying,
see it as
Matt.
separate things, but they're related.
And I guess my ultimate goal is, I see that we have people that want to do this.
Yes.
And I see that there is a need in some aspects for volunteers.
Yeah.
And if we don't have this in place, we need to get it ASAP.
Yes.
Because coming from a volunteer fire department, you know, that was our main source of people, was volunteers.
Yeah.
And to cut that off is like, ooh. That's
Is that
bad.
gonna mess
So-
any of the union issues though?
Shouldn't.
Cause I remember there was discussion when we were going through the union or starting the union thing about going back to volunteers.
No, the only thing there is if we start staffing with volunteers in lieu of
Our
paid
paid,
staff.
As long as we maintain our minimum staffing of 2 paid people,
Yeah,
we should be able to backfill with
yeah,
volunteers.
we back to a volunteers, we go on calls, all that stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, so there's no reason we can't have that. There's no reason we shouldn't have a policy, I guess.
I think there's, possibility that some of the full-time or the union members might maybe complain that they're not being offered the things that, like if, we call a volunteer in to assist on a fire or something. And, a full-timer wasn't offered that might.
Well, I think that boils down to Andy's call list that he
Yeah,
goes
we have
through.
Yeah.
It's a call list, it's the active
Yeah.
911, it goes out to everybody.
Yeah.
It's, everybody comes to help, if
Yeah.
you're,
I'll write that.
you know, in your house and you don't have good reception there, I can't help that.
Yeah.
You know, but if the volunteer has great reception in their house and they show up, I'm not gonna refuse anybody that's willing to help.
No, but we have a policy in CDA that allow for that, right? So like, we have a policy for that, or callback is part of that, right? That's part of our procedures and how we do stuff and how we do business, yes. So,
okay, so help me understand this. He was brought on. Nobody checked for a policy for volunteer. And then all of a sudden, why is Sherry and her HR team involved?
Where did you get the original one that you sent to Sherry?
I had one of the employees write the policy up because they wanted to bring on volunteers and my
We
plate's,
didn't have
my
one.
plate's full.
Okay.
Please help me with this.
Okay.
They wrote up a policy, I reviewed it. And I had some applications, I was bringing applications in, I was told, you don't have volunteers, and the application was pushed back across the table, and I said, okay. So I took that back, I brought it back here, it's locked up safe. And I have other applications stacking up for volunteers. And I'm told, well, at that time, do you have a volunteer policy? Do you have this? Do you have that? So we started creating all this, volunteer application, volunteer policy. I have pushed that forward to HR because I was told, push that forward, we'll review it and get it out.
Doesn't it have to go through the board? I mean, I agree.
we're gonna want it vetted by HR before we enact a policy that has to do with, it's not employment, but with controlling people's work, because we're gonna be directing them and, hey, yes, you can do X, Y, and Z and blah, 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 right? So we would want that to be vetted to make sure that we're following practical laws. And so whether we implement or enact a policy that may or may not meet some of those things, we would have to get it vetted by HR, and I would prefer it comes from HR, like, yes, this is good to go. We can enact that policy as a board, and we don't have to go through that step to get it vetted. If that makes sense.
I've just gone through this, and this is your policy manual, and chapter 10 is personnel, and there's nothing that would even
Doesn't even
be
hint at volunteers.
considered
Do we
under
have
the
a,
volunteer.
my
Yeah.
next question, similar to this, is do we have a policy on reserves? Because I know some of our people are volunteer / reserves and they can get paid for going on calls, I think is correct, right? How that works?
So reserve is different than volunteer. Volunteer gets no pay, reserve. gets
Right.
pay. So
So my question is, if we don't have a volunteer
Right.
policy, do we have a reserve
policy?
policy?
I'm gonna say,
So I guess I bring it up just because I want to get this fixed ASAP, because we have the personnel willing to do the work and be here. And they, you know, some of them are here, they're on board, and to now be like, well, we realize we don't have policies, and so you guys can't do what we asked you to do for a time. It's a little frustrating. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing that we've gone this route, but you know, I bring it up because I want to get this taken care of as soon as possible. I think we owe it to the community and communities to you know, get this taken care of.
We do have a policy 1004 that calls for
position.
thank you, position descriptions. But it basically says the administrator will develop and maintain classification specific, example, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't really go into detail. But that's the only one that even goes. But I remember the 1004 being repeatedly brought up.
So do we have an ET or an estimate from HR on? Yeah.
I asked about it the other day and I didn't have a clear answer.
So I think to Mark's point, we better ask him to review our, what was that chapter called? Is it
Chapter
personnel?
10,
Personnel.
personnel.
And make sure that our current policy covers all of our classification of people that help us. You know, whether it's reserve, volunteer, paid staff, that we're in compliance with the policy.
Yeah, just legal with the CPA, so that there's legal cover for the district.
And then the other volunteers that we are utilizing, we're not using them anymore.
Well, Dave, who?
If you had a fire call tomorrow,
I thought Susie Wrights was.
Well, technically she volunteered because she does our website.
Yeah, absolutely.
Volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of the other names right now.
Are our current assistant chiefs
What about John?
volunteer / reserve?
John has been filling in time card for the first time.
Okay.
employee, so.
yeah, we moved it.
What about Zach?
Oh,
How is he classified? Only because I was,
volunteer, I haven't seen him in quite a while, but he has not turned in the stuff and.
only because we were talking about him earlier.
So I'll
He could.
follow up with HR tomorrow, somewhere. See where the status is.
It's common for people who are on support staff to be volunteers, sandwich makers or SCBA cylinder refillers or something like that. That's common. But to dovetail what Matt did earlier, when you put some money in IDLH in danger to health or life, then they're compensated, they're paid. That's protection for the district for legal protection as well.
So
Okay.
and I don't know what the timeline is, but I'll reach out to HR and I'll get an email or a text. I'll get an email out to folks and say with that.
Thank you.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call audible. Cause I was busy when we were adding stuff to the agenda, so I have a number 5 and a number 6 that I would like to throw on the list. Number 5 would be a budget resolution for the budget that we just adopted. So this is resolution 2026-06 by resolution 2026-06, the 2026-27 East Umatilla Fire and Rescue.
So it's resolution number 2606, right?
2606 is the resolution number. I think we seems to be freaking out there. East Umatilla, oh, it's East Umatilla Fire and Rescue Board of Directors adopt the attached budget for fiscal year.
It's say 25, 26,
Yeah.
26, 27. No, that's great.
These are two different resolutions. So this says by resolution 2026-06. It should say East Umatilla Fire Rescue Board of Directors adopt fiscal budget for 26-27.
Correct.
You have 26-27 in there ahead of East Umatilla Fire.
I sure do.
So that's, I just struck that out. So by resolution 2026-06, the East Umatilla Fire and Rescue Board of Directors, the Umatilla Board, Fire and Rescue Board of Directors adopt the attached budget that we just did up there. That's emailed to the board. You guys should have it in your email. It's in your email. It's in your email. I think that's probably should have sent it to you too, but I didn't. Apologies, I can't. Adopted the attached budget for fiscal year 2026-2027. Do I have a motion for this resolution?
So moved.
Okay, then moved by Greg,
Second.
seconded by Chris. Those in favor?
I,
Aye. Those opposed? No line. That one's.
end today.
Hey, it's you.
Maybe under
Andrew,
Andrew.
that's why.
Oh, you're in trouble, mate.
It's on its way.
Use my whole name, I'm really in trouble.
Yep.
So that squares away our budget. The last thing I had, so number 6, it ties into the budget piece, is the future status of the district, IGA, chief services, whatever you want to call it, what we've been trying to work down. It got missed when we pushed the agenda out, but the budget is part of that. I kind of waited until we got to our meeting, the meeting that I'm in order to kind of talk through a little bit of that. Chris touched on some of the solvency stuff on the medic side, trying to maintain solvency past year 1, year 2, year 3 down the road. Just to try to revisit this stuff. We've been looking at the fire budget, looking at the medic budget, and that timeline isn't super far out there with how we're eating into contingency and eating into, it's costing more to do business. So we looked at all that stuff. We looked at the splits. There's not a lot of other ways for us to get more efficient, trying to merge without merging, and we're not going to be able to merge until it's just not going to happen in the environment until something changes at the county-wide level. I think we feed on this stuff quite a bit. There's maybe only a couple ways that we could make that even more efficient. I don't think we can really. It's not gonna have a significant impact downstream. It might save us. It might get us to year 3 versus year 2, but it's not going to do a ton more than that. Just kind of speaking that way. So we strategized on that. How do we maintain our solvency? How do we do that? I know the board has agreed to pursue an IGA with Pendleton for chief services moving forward on July 1st. So we're actively working down that path. So part of that is coming up with the IGA, what that'll look like. We have a template, the Tony shared the template they have for chief services for Pilot Rock. So they're already doing that for Pilot Rock Fire right now. It's like a 2-pager, maybe 3.
Yeah, it's really clean. I like it.
Super clean.
Yeah.
We'd have to tweak a few things to that. I will share that out with the rest of the board. But it's a pretty, I guess I would recommend that we have 2 IGAs and not try to lump all of it into one. Because if we go that route and we don't like how the IGA for chief services happens in 3 months from now, I don't want to have to back out all of that. Now we don't have payroll. Now we don't have HR. And so we leave existing one in place and we would put another one in place for chief services and we could operate them independently. And that would be kind of where we would track 2 of them separately in the financials, but we'll get there if we choose to enact another IGA. Price point isn't probably where we wanted it, but it would, as Chris alluded to in the previous meeting, bumping that line item up to $60,000 a year is where that's where their starting offer is. I don't know. I don't know if there's a lot of room to wiggle and negotiate. I think there are some things that we would need to look at since these would be separate IGAs. I don't know if that's, if that would meet the intent. So I do believe there's a cap on what an IGA can have financially for within the state board. But we'll do a little more look in that direction. So that IGA for chief services basically turns, we would be adopting is the right word, but we would be turning to the city of Pendleton Fire Department for chief services for our department. We talked through in our budget, we've had a chief and we've had a health administrator in there. We don't have the budget for both of those things. It's either we have a budget for a chief full-time, or we have a budget for a health administrator full-time, but we don't have the budget margin for a full-time chief and a full-time health administrator moving forward in this environment. So what we've kind of tumbled to that is we've got part of this chief services would be, part-time. And instead of having a health administrator moving forward, the recommendation was that we would have an assistant chief of operations, I think. And we've talked through this stuff. So we're working on the budget piece. I think we've got that in a good spot. We've been working on a position description for an assistant chief of operations to go with that. I think that's where we are, and we've got positive feedback from Pendleton on all of those things. We're going down the right path with the assistant chief position description, and I think we're making headway in pursuing this as an option. And I guess that's kind of the report back to the board. You have anything else before I get to the next step?
I think that assistant chief of operations is basically like a health administrator with like local oversight, since you wouldn't have an on-site fire chief. They would have the on-site supervisory responsibilities on top of making sure that the medics are doing all the things, that the scheduling's done, that so it's sort of like blowing up Andy's position a little bit, adding some more responsibilities, which is why in the budget that the numbers plussed up to account for the additional responsibilities.
Yeah. And so essentially, what we would be doing too, and this is probably where it's going to get a little uneasy, is we, in order to do this, we can't staff both positions. We can't staff an assistant chief of operations and a health administrator at that point, because they're both full-time positions. So what Pendleton would then do is if we do this, they're going to want to hire the assistant chief of operations. So that person would not work for the board per se. That person would work for the chief of Pendleton based on the IGA that we have as the board with our, what would be our new chief. I don't know if that makes sense. Is that tracking?
So in
So
other words, Andy would lose his position and Pendleton would hire whoever that position is.
Pendleton would hire the assistant chief of operations and the health administrator position would go away. Yes.
I disagree.
Okay.
I highly disagree. I don't have a problem per saying Andy losing his position per se. I have a problem with Pendleton, who has no ties to us, having the right to hire Johnny that works for him because they work good together. I think it needs to stay in-house. And I'm not saying the board needs to necessarily hire that position, but I don't think that Pendleton should be the one to hire that position.
So who should hire that position then?
I think we should.
Well, you just said the board shouldn't hire that position. So
We have one right here.
we do. And we don't have a fire chief on July 1st.
Okay, but if we're
So
hiring IGA for Pendleton, why would he not get to hold on to that position?
because we can't have both positions.
So Pendleton hires Johnny from Pendleton to come and take it.
It's possible.
We have to pay Pendleton to pay for Johnny's wage anyways. So I guess I'm not understanding.
So
If I'm paying for the IGA for Chief Karate, and now I have to pay for Johnny's wage, why does Johnny get wage and not Andy?
because we can't afford both things.
But we're gonna pay it either way.
So effectively what you want to do is, take names out of it, but hire the administrator to be the fire chief. Is that
No,
what-
the administrator to be the operational chief.
So
So it's just a classification.
So
difference.
here's where it's gonna get really rough, is because we as a board hire a fire chief. That's our job.
Okay,
Whether it's our fire chief, whether we contract that out with another thing, that's our job, is to hire a CEO for our district. It's not our job to hire the staff underneath that CEO. And if we're saying we're gonna contract with Pendleton for chief services, you're now our CEO, you're doing our hiring. They're gonna do our hiring whether it's an assistant chief position, they're gonna do our hiring whether that's a lieutenant position, they're gonna do the hiring whether that's a medic position. And down the line, right? They're gonna do the hiring because that's what we pay them to do, just like we have a fire chief now, that's what that position does, hires their staff. So if we're contracting that out, they're gonna be hiring our staff. They're gonna hire a medic if a medic leaves tomorrow. Like, that's what they would do. They would have a process. They would have all of that stuff in play to, like, okay, we're gonna screen, we're gonna test, we're gonna do all the stuff that we do to hire a medic. Okay, that's the medic that's gonna go out there and they're gonna work for EC Matilla because that's who's paying the bill and they're gonna have the EC Matilla shirt. So they would just be taking over the hiring for us because that's what we're asking them to do.
the future hiring, we already have somebody in that spot.
So you show me a budget where we can afford an assistant chief of operations and a health administrator.
I'm not saying chief operations and health administrator and fire chief.
Nope. Assistant chief of operations, because we've already broached the subject. So if we don't have a fire chief on July 1.
Correct.
We're trying to get an assistant chief of operations on July 1 to do all of our business and run of all of our operations. We don't have an assistant chief of operations and a health administrator. We don't have the capacity in the budget. There's just not money in there for 2 full-time positions. We've talked about, we don't have the money for a full-time chief.
But you're
and a
giving
full-time
me
health
3
administrator.
positions.
No,
You're giving me
Matt?
operations.
Ray,
Well, no, go ahead, Chris. I think,
You
Chris,
keep saying chief operations, health administrator, and chief. And I'm not looking at 3. If you want a classification switch, then you've got your chief and your operations. So why does Andy lose that position if he's already there?
Because the health administrator job will not exist forward.
I get that, but he's also the assistant fire chief per Dave giving him that. So why is he losing his position as operational chief? Give him a different title, but don't knock him back down to janitor.
We're
I
not-
don't think we could, I don't think we can do that. I think if we're creating a new position, then we have to
have to fly it competitive.
open it up. We have to open it up whether you want to or not, because we're creating a whole new position and job description. And I don't believe that you can't just make that transfer without, in fact, besides Andy and, I mean, maybe somebody else in the department wants to apply for it too. So you would have to, and I'm doing the dishes, by the way, in case you think I'm goofing off. You have to open it up. And the best scenario is Andy applies for it and he's got his qualifications all, and he's going to be one of your top candidates, but you're going to have to open it up. And if there's a discussion, you could run it by SDA or I think HR is going to tell you how to do it. Matt,
That's
all
helpful, right? No, that's helpful because, and that's the fact of the matter is that if we create a new position, like we're moving down the path, then that will have to be competitive for anybody to apply for. Where we get in trouble is when we modify duties and say, oh, well, we've hired you to do this. We're going to add a whole bunch of this stuff on. We'll pay you a little bit more. Now we're outside of our contract. Now we're outside, like we're not, part of the issue is we haven't been doing the right thing in the past and we're trying to right size that, and it feels like it's all coming at the same time. But if we create that job tomorrow at the assistant chief of operations and we don't have a chief moving forward, who's going to hire? I mean, the board would hire that at that point, but that's not our job. Our job is not to get into the operational level and hire that. Our job is to hire a CEO, and the board is actually moving down the path of trying to solicit that from outside services. So it's not ideal, but that's the way we have to do business moving forward, if that's what we choose. If not, we can go back to, hey, we're just going to hire our own fire chief. We're going to open that competitively. But again, we're going to run into the same issue by trying to have a full-time fire chief and a full-time health administrator at this point. So we're right back to that same math equation.
And Matt, I think even if we do that, SD, I think we'd be told that we have to open that up. I mean, that's my experience.
Yeah.
Because it would be a different job with a different salary.
Yep. And we know, that's the one thing that we didn't try, but that was one of our options. Our options were extend Dave's contract. Our options were solicit IGA with Pendleton, see if they'll provide chief services. And our options are hire our own fire chief, fly the position, and go like we did 7 years ago, right? Or 8 years ago, I guess it was. That's our options. And the board took option 2, which was solicit for Pendleton Fire. That's where this is going to go, because they want, in order for us to have somebody here in a leadership capacity, that we envision, we want that to be part of our organization. That's where that position that we've developed as assistant chief, to make it comparable with some of the other stuff around, to run the department, like run the day-to-day operations. That's where that comes out at, and that would give us the ability. But at that point, we're contracting out for the chief services, so we don't have the right to hire that person, because they don't actually work for us, they work for the chief. And I know that sounds like a really weird thing, but our job is to hire a CEO and let the operations go under them, right? So we can't, where we get into some issues is as a board, we go to Andy for stuff, and I'll pick on you a little bit, but Andy actually reports to somebody else. He doesn't report to the board, right? And so this puts that insulation and the right chain of command and the right layers in place for that to happen. Because, you know, if, and I would go to the point in this, I wasn't quite all there, but the more I think about it, the more board shouldn't have any, we shouldn't be involved in that hiring at those lower levels. Even if we had our own chief on the panel, because if
That's exactly right.
if we're directing the chief and the chief hires somebody that the board told them to, you know what I mean? Like, well, we told you to hire this person, and now, you know, it's just like, you're superseding chain of command and all the stuff that goes with it, and you're just creating problems downstream. So it's not, like I said, it's not ideal. It's not a place that we probably want to be, but that's the price of doing business if this is the route. And if the board chooses to go a different route than pursuing Pendleton for IGA for chief services, then we got to go back to some other options. But if we pursue that, that's the price of admission for that. As we help develop our organization, this is what we want. They're going to implement what we want, because
I
they work for
understand
us.
what you're saying. And I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, Dave, but that's what the medic board had problems with. Was things were not transparent, things were not A, B, C, D, E, F, G, where we felt we needed to step in and fly a position that we got transparency. And I don't know.
Does anyone else have any? This is an open forum, and this is why we need to discuss this in this forum, because it's good.
Yeah.
If you don't agree, I want to know. Like, we need to know. You know, I think we tumbled to a few more things with the budget stuff and staying solvent in the future. Is there's not, this option takes us from probably, you know, 2 years, a year to 2 years to 2 to 3 years. This is going to add some time on our solvency. You know, like any other IGA, there's, like, we can back out if it's not working and we don't like the service that we're getting. There's a way to remove ourselves from that. I do believe, as it is, Andy's meeting with Chief Roddy weekly, probably. So we're getting a little bit of that now, and we're getting the service that the modernizing of our district and our facilities and our staff and everything that we're doing. We're modernizing our staffing model and our CEO going forward, right? And so the demands of 2026 we're getting a pretty good deal with that.
So as a medic board, if we wanted to hire our own CEO, can we?
I think if the medic board wants to do that, then you're within your rights to do that.
But it would have that person that we hired as the medic board would have no authority over the guys that are employed by the fire district.
Yeah.
The only way that really works is to end the IGA.
Yeah, and we talked about that. And the reality is prior to the IGA, fire district had a paid fire chief, and Bill, part-time
Paid maintenance guy.
You know, maintenance and the fire chief and all volunteers, and medic had a health administrator and medics, right? And
yep.
I mean, effectively, that's where we were.
Right.
If we were to decouple tomorrow, That's what we would have to go back to. And I don't know, I don't think the fire department is sustainable that way in the long term. And I don't believe that the medic district is stable in that long term with that either. And so the only way to make that work would be to decouple the IGA and just back away from it. But neither district is solvent after that. We're not gonna staff 6 firefighters as a fire department. I don't know that the medic district's gonna be able to staff 6 plus of them, you know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
we're,
Well, we go back to stipend. I mean, we may not have as good a medical insurance, but we had 30 employees or more.
yeah, so, and I don't know if this is just kind of preemptively having the discussion, but we've been operating under our IGA for a while. Things are going as good as we can make them. We've talked about the stronger together, the countywide type stuff, and setting ourselves up to be part of that. But inevitably, when that happens, we're going to be part of that, and we may not hire the CEO at that point.
Right.
You know, and so maybe this is like too many steps too far for folks. But I don't see a lot of other options out there that maintain the district solvency, provide the level of service that we need to provide to the community, and still, you know, at the end of like, we just can't operate any other way. I don't see another way.
Yeah, okay, if I say-
Oh, yeah, please.
I think what feels
I've been talking
yucky, Chris, is when you have to tell somebody that your position's gonna go away and you have to compete for a job. I think that's the part that feels yucky.
I would agree with that.
Right? But the unfortunate thing is that we cannot afford a fire chief and a health administrator, full time. The dollars are not there.
But I think when you guys are discussing that, I think in your mind is you're talking 2 chiefs. And then you've got this third operational chief.
No, we cannot afford, forget the position titles, we cannot afford 2 full-time administrative positions.
Right.
Whatever you call them, we cannot afford 2
And the
full-time.
chief is part-time, because he's not sitting in our office,
Right, we can afford a part-time chief
but this
and a
person would be.
full-time
Right,
on-site person. That's what we can afford.
right,
Whatever you want to call them.
okay,
But the full-time person that's
On-site.
on-site person here has to do more than what's in Andy's job description.
okay,
And to be able to make that job into it, it has to be reflown. And all the board can hire. I mean, if you could call up SDAO, all we're supposed to hire is the fire chief, the executive, the top dog. That's all we get to hire. Everybody else is hired by the chief. So that's what feels yucky. Is telling Andy that you're gonna have to compete for a job. Now, my hope is that because he has this established relationship with Chief Brady, he's been going to school, he's got this and this and this experience.
Right.
I would hope that he's a top candidate. That'd be my hope. But it has to be competitive to be fair, to be right, in the site, and to be able to stand up at the end of the day to the taxpayers and said we did our job. It has to be flown. And if we decided that we didn't want to pursue an agreement for a part-time chief position with Pendleton, and we just wanted to hire our own fire chief, the health administrator position would have to go away anyway. We couldn't afford both.
right,
So Andy would have, at that point, he'd be competing for the chief's job. So sorry, Andy. I mean, you're kind of in a tough spot. I just can't I can't see it, I can't find the dollars to go any other route besides one of those. All the other guys seem to like to eat.
Matt,
What do you have to say, Ray?
oh, um, well, I mean, and I think we're looking, if we are looking at consolidation with the county, then really kind of the next step would be combining with Pendleton. And if it's not Pendleton, it'll be some sort of east side fire and ambulance district.
Yeah.
And potentially we could make that move
Yeah, there's,
sooner than later, but
yeah. So there are other options, if we're. If the countywide stuff or a larger district might be another way to put that before we get to a full on countywide. How do we navigate that, right? Is that an option moving forward? In my mind, this one retains our identity for a bit longer. To allow us a little bit of transition time. Because if, when we get to that larger entity, we're part of it. We're feeding our tax dollars into that. We're asking for service, but we're not really managing that anymore. That's not, our district is kind of feeding that off to a larger entity, right? So this is one of the stepping stones to maintain our identity until we cross that bridge. There's probably some other options out there. Which, probably, well, I'll mention just for folks to chew on would be, what would that look like if we became that county entity or that larger fire district? Like, think of the satellites around the city of Pendleton that push all their district revenue into the city of Pendleton and say, protect our houses. You look at the medic district to the north, they're a functioning medic district. They pull in their tax revenue and they push that all into a contract with Milton Free Water Rural, right? And so they provide all of the medic service for that area. That district probably holds back enough to do an audit and do whatever they need to do, district business, but all of that gets passed through to that contractor and that vendor, and that's how the bigger system would work for us, is we would pass through our revenue into that to buy in and be part of that organization that exists. So that's, that's hanging out there too. Like, what does that look like? I don't know that we want to pull the trigger and do that, but there's not a lot of other options though. So and I think try to come back around and make a full circle. We've explored what would it look like if we decoupled. Can we sustain on our own? And I think the answer is no. Neither district can sustain on our own. And for good reason. We joined and formed this IGA to work better together, and I think we've become, mutually reliant on the organization that we created, which sucks if you want to break it apart, but it works. Like, it's been working and it works. So I think that's a good thing. That's in the plus column. But if we decided with that tomorrow that, hey, we want to hire a fire chief, so we want a full-time fire chief and we want a full-time health administrator, we can't do that as it exists. Like, we can't do that. And we're at a point with the contract running out. We've got an IGA in place for some other stuff. It's opened some doors to these other options for us. We're at a point where we've got to pick an option and go for it. So.
I understand the financial aspect. I do. I have some issues.
So, and we don't need to make a decision tonight on this. But if we're, as a board, if we decide that we want to go another route, we need to say it. Because we're working down this path.
Right.
And that's the current direction that we're operating under. And we're from the city of Pendleton's perspective, we're on the right path. Like we're working down the stuff that we need to in order for them to say, yeah, this is doable and feasible. So, and if we decide to do something different from the board, then we need to decide to do something different so we can kind of, halt our progress, so to speak.
Well, the board passed a motion, charge the three of you, come up with a program that will work for 3 or more years, and you're doing it. So I think we need to wait and see what that program is in its entirety. Because if we decide a different route, we're too late anyway. We can't do that by the 1st of July. So we're already in trouble, in my opinion. I think we gotta let the three of you finish, present us with a plan, and then we either prove it or try to modify it within your parameters, because you know what the reality is. So move on.
I think whether it's formal or not, that's what we've come up with as a plan.
Yeah.
Is an IGA for chief services with the city of Pendleton. We developed on the organizational side a position description that would meet our needs to have, and then we turn it over. Because that's all we can do at that point. So.
Well, it's sad for some of us who've been around for a long time to see us lose control of the fire district, because it's been a part of our lives for many years, and we belong. And now it's going to be, we're going to hire a chief, and he's going to run it his way, which he has to do. As there's absolutely no question about that. He has to be able to hire and fire whoever he likes, and whoever does the best job. But we're just stuck with that, and so there's some grief that goes along with growth, and that's or progress, whatever you want to call it. And so that's what we're dealing with. So you need to have some patience with us when we ask questions about why can't we do this or why can't we do that? Because we're in a grieving process. We're losing control of the district. But it's okay. I mean, it's the job's got to be done. Citizens need protection that we provide, and we're going to give it to them.
Well, I don't see it any different whether we hire that CEO. Well, we're just hiring the CEO.
Yeah.
So, we still have control in that sense of, hey, this is a person, or this is the entity or the person that we have in charge. And if we don't like it, we can change that.
Well,
that is a component.
But Matt, the difference, you and I agree with the ultimate goal, absolutely. The difference is that we're used to having a chief lives west, that lives here, and has very, very close relationship with Adams and Athena and Helix, very close relationship. And so, we go to church together, we eat together, we do all these things. This guy's from Pendleton. We don't know anything about him. He's probably a good man, probably better than anything we have out here. But it's just, we lose that contact. And it's okay. That's the way life is. But it's a sensitive issue to some of us. And are we going to put up with it? Absolutely, we're going to put up with it. We're going to support it fully. But it ain't easy.
So I'm curious, Christine, what do you think? Are we on the right track? Are we rowing the wrong way?
I agree with what Greg said, and for me personally, it is losing Andy, and also that person that sits within our district. I mean, lives, breathes, that sort of thing. So I mean, we're taxed with a very, very hard situation. And I think you said it very graciously is, you know, it's affecting a person that we, as the medic, we needed that person. And Andy fit that bill.
And now to be told he's not good enough, or possibly not good enough, because Chief Proddy may want Johnny Doe from Hermiston. Well, Johnny doesn't live in our district.
And I'm not even saying that we're saying Andy's not good enough, but the fact that Andy has this position and would have to apply, and I understand it's a new position, and so I understand all of that. We do that in the corporate world, right? I mean, it just happens, but it doesn't feel good. I would hate to see Andy lose his job. And as a medic, this is what we asked for.
But as directors, we've been elected by the people of this area to provide a service. And so the mission of the Health and Fire Board is far more important to us than any of us sitting in this room. And so these guys are just doing what they gotta do the best way they can. And you talk about business, industry, they do this on an hourly basis. I mean, this is nothing to them, you know, just, and it hurts them too. You know, the hardest thing I ever did in business was fire somebody or release them. You know, I mean, it's terrible, but it's gotta be done sometime. And that's what they're doing here. They're walking a path that they may not like either, or they may, I don't know. But I don't think anybody but Matt has a better idea on what this place is gonna look like 10 years from now. I don't know of anybody that knows as accurately as he's probably wrong, but he's less wrong.
I agree. I agree.
I don't know of anybody that knows, has a better handle on our financial status than this kid sitting right over here. I mean, he really is down in the weeds with it. He knows. And certainly, with our gentleman here on the telephone, he's got a vast amount of experience in fire and health. I think we got the three best people possible working on this challenge. And I'm glad I'm not on that group, because I'm not smart enough. I'm not experienced enough. I think we got the best, and I think they'll come up with the best possible solution. Will we like it? Yeah, well, like part was, but we're talking about survival. We've got to survive as a district 10 years from now. These people here need our support, need the support. And so they're talking about survival.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a bitch, it's tough, but that's the way it is. Excuse me, I didn't mean to speak for you.
Said it well. Mark, what are your thoughts?
I mean, first thing my brain goes to is the number. You know, the numbers aren't gonna lie. You know, unlike the state, we're not gonna have, $2 million show up on our porch and, oh my God, where did this come from? So, finding a solution to that, I mean, I understand the process. The whole time Chris and Matt were talking the process, and it's like, okay, on one hand, it doesn't make sense, but on the other, it does. We're hiring a number one. We already have a number two, but if a number two job description doesn't fit what needs to be there, then obviously we can't just go in and go, oh, well, let me white that out and change that. So, but, being concerned that somebody coming, well, how do I put this? If we were to open it up and hire somebody brand new, they're probably not gonna be from this area anyway. So we're gonna lose that connection with the community anyway, at least for a few years until that person gets acclimated. So is there, are we saying that, oh, if we decide to have an IGA with Pendleton, then all of a sudden, we're not gonna have somebody here? Well, Chief Parati has already shown that he's willing to come out and sit in the meetings. So, does that mean that's the best choice? Well, I'm still, mulling things over, but at the same time, I don't want to discount that community connection, because I think it can come from anywhere. I think just because people are in Pendleton doesn't mean that they can't have a connection to the community out here. I mean, if you look at the school system, I think probably half of our teachers live in Pendleton or Walla Walla. Does that mean they're not connected to the community? No, because they work here. They, interact. So I think that there's a bigger picture in all of this of, I've got my hopes and dreams of what our department is going to be and what our agency is going to be. And it's moving forward and getting past those humps that we're facing right now. And yes, it's painful anytime. I mean, every time there's an election, it's like, okay, who's my new boss going to be? What changes are they going to make? What can I not do tomorrow that I could do today? So there's hardships that we're going to have to go through to move forward. We all know that. I appreciate Matt, Chris, and Ray and your work in putting this together. I was kind of glancing on the IGA just a little bit, and this, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, it makes sense to, if we want to move forward and become a more professional agency, there's no harm in getting help from an agency that has been big and professional for a long, long time. I mean, Pendleton has been a paid agency as long as I can remember. I mean, that's, Dave, you started there. You were a paid fireman, for many years in Pendleton. They're set in their ways because they've been operating with that type of system for a long, long time. This agency has only been that type of an agency for a few years. Prior to that, we were all volunteer. So I think there's a level of experience and knowledge that hopefully, I know that you said Andy's been meeting with the chief, that I hope that, the chief has been imparting onto Andy that makes him a really good candidate for, if we go through this process. I think the more we move forward, the more structure and more professional this agency is going to become. Nothing against the old style of agency that we used to have with the volunteer and the good old boys, because most of them could start a fire just as well as they could put it out. But we're moving forward, and we're moving forward into this, building this agency and making it a very professional agency, which I think we are doing a really good job with. It's just, what's the next step? And so I guess that's where I'm at. I'm not saying I'm 100% sold on anything right now, but I see the benefit of this option over, say, the uncertainty of putting the job out there and not knowing who is going to apply and who's going to be brought on board if we were to put the job out to have people apply. So at least we have some knowledge with how Chief Parati runs the fire department and his willingness to come out and communicate with us. And so that's kind of where I'm at.
So I'll get the IGA that they have. So that's the one that they have with Pilot Rock, share it out to folks so they can see it. Do you want me to try to mock that up for our district before I do that? Or do you want to see the Pilot Rock, what exists without any modifications? Because the only modifications are going to be changing.
Why don't you do them both?
changing names, and this is probably what it's gonna look like, et cetera. I'll try to get to that over the weekend, like the mock-up, but I could send that one out tonight or tomorrow morning. I'll just get that one out, so folks can see.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
And you'll send that to all of us.
Yeah. Yep, I'll send it to both boards. We're not too far away from what I would say a go, no go need, right? I don't want to belabor this anymore. I'm appreciative of folks sharing their thoughts. That's important. If we're to the good of the order spot, I have a good of the order. But if we want to keep talking about this, like, let's talk.
I guess I just have one little thing. I understand the numbers and I fully am there with the numbers. I guess what I have the problem with, and take names out of it, is the fact that we have invested a year and a half to move somebody into that operational spot and then to pull it back. And I think instead of opening it up to anybody, we need to look at what we have and offer it internally first. You've been doing this for X amount of time or whatever. We've already invested in this employee versus flying it. I think that's the part that I have a problem with. I understand that we, as the board, need to determine, okay, this is how we want. Remember, you and I had looked at something a year and a half ago. We want a chief. We want this people underneath and then this people. And we can do that graph. But where do our people fit in? And to fly it openly to whoever from Timbuktu to come in and take it away from our employees that we have already invested in that training, in that whatever. I think that's the part that bothers me. I understand financially we can only do this or that. But I just believe in our people. That's what we have always said. That's what Chief Beatty has always said. Let's look at our employees and see if one of them would fit in that position. And to, I don't know. That's where I think have the strongest opinion. Not at the financial, because you guys are doing awesome, and I know that you see things that we don't. And I agree with Greg, you are amazing on budgets and whatnot, and Ray has got his special powers and Matt's got his superpowers, and I agree with that threesome being the best. I guess I just have that. I want to support our guys that are here, that are our employees, instead of anybody outside the district.
Let me make a brief statement that I hope helps you see something. Whoever replaces Dave will not operate the way Dave did.
Correct.
It wouldn't make any difference. Dave didn't operate the way that his predecessor did. And so the person that takes over the job of chief has needs to operate the way he wants or she wants to make it run. And so they may be looking for totally different people. totally different skill sets, different attitudes, different whatever. That's their job. We hope we're hiring the best person to do that job. But we can't expect for the momentum that we have to just continue, because it won't. The new guy is gonna have, or new gal is gonna have their own philosophies, their own attitudes.
But a new sheriff is not gonna fire all of his employees because they don't like the haircut.
But he will appoint a brand new undersheriff. The
Okay.
number 2 person is always on the chopping block at election.
Well,
I'm not saying that's the chopping block, but
Okay.
with any agency, elected officials, that's, when I was a reserve, every time there was an election, again, who's the new undersheriff gonna be? Not just the sheriff, but who's the undersheriff? So, same with my agency, we get a new director, they come in and they look at all of the head admin and they go, okay, we're gonna keep this one, we need to replace this one, gonna keep this one, replace this one.
See, that's not how building codes does.
well,
So,
we're our own entity.
Yep.
Yes, good point.
I'll shut up.
No, I'm getting to that.
Me shutting up?
No,
Yes, that's what it is.
Is it illegal to offer the position internally first, even?
well, I'll try to address it this way. What part of the issue with that is where we are right now with the health administrator position as the contract is. He's doing stuff that's not in that contract.
Mhm.
And so, as an employer, we are asking, telling, whatever, an employee to operate outside the bounds of their position that we have created. We've created the position and the chief has hired somebody to go into that position. And maybe there was board influence, maybe there wasn't, whatever, doesn't matter. If we're outside the scope with that right now. And so we have to do something, whether it's the health administrator position and add these other duties into it. And if we do that, when we say, okay, we've changed this PD, we're just gonna promote from within and you're blessed with this new title moving forward. That's what's gotten us into a bunch of messes in the past. And part of that transparency is, hey, the health administrator doesn't work anymore. We need an assistant chief, or we need a whatever we want to call that. We have to design that component and say that these are the duties and these are the job that we want done. Whoever fills that, fire chief fills that, the board could fill that. If it's the CEO, COO or CEO, that needs to be done regardless, because the way it's written is he is operating outside of his contract right now. Is that a liability on him? Is that a liability on the board? Like I think that's a fair question that we look at the math and the number side, but we're also asking our person to operate outside of the scope of their duties right now
And other additional duties.
Yep, other duties as assigned, or other related duties as assigned, which can be no more than, the rule of thumb is 5%, right?
So why don't we
But-
do exactly what we want? This is what our parameters are. And offer it to him, and if he doesn't want it,
Because what does that do to everybody else here that might want to compete for that job? And out there that wants to compete for that job?
And there's nothing that says that the new chief won't relieve him of the
Because
job anyway.
that in effect is we're designing a job for him, for an individual, and we're not designing a job to have a job done.
no, we're designing it how we want it, however,
But
he would have first option.
yeah, and that's, we, as an employer, we can't do that. We have jobs and we screen people based on criteria and minimum qualifications, whatever you want to say. And then we have an application process and a, interview, right? The whole process that goes with that. When we design a thing and say, hey, do you want to do this? And if you don't, then we'll open it up competitively. Well, we should be opening up that competitively in the first place. And I'm not trying to attack anybody or attack, Andy in this case, but that's part of the issue in the past is we've done that. We've said, hey,
Yeah.
we like
That's how
you.
it's been the last.
We're gonna
10
move
years.
you. Yeah, and we can't do that.
But we didn't do that with Andy's position. We flew the position, we interviewed for the position, and it's not a rebuttal, I'm just saying, we did go through
Yes,
those
Yeah.
processes, I mean,
but now we're gonna add a bunch of stuff to that position.
exactly, it's,
And so if we wanted to do that tomorrow, we'd have to fly that anyway. If we decided that whether it's a chief or whatever, if we decided that job doesn't fit now because it doesn't, because we needed to do all these other things that we want as a district, we have to fly that job in some capacity. And we have to have metrics to hire that and do all that stuff. And whether we do that as a board or whether the person that we hire as our chief does that, like, it's still gonna be done one way or the other. I don't, is that,
no, yeah, no,
So do we have a new organizational chart?
well, that's part of it.
There will be.
there will have to be.
We'd have, our design at this point is an
But you
assistant,
haven't completed it
well,
yet.
we haven't drawn
Okay.
it, I don't know, but it's the chief, the assistant chief of operations, and then our
Cause
staff.
we have what, 3 assistant chiefs?
We have, yes, we do.
And we don't need but 1.
That's part of that.
Okay.
Yeah. Like everything's out there.
Recalculating.
Yes.
Okay.
Those other positions are part-time as, whatever, they're not stipend anymore. They're, hey, you come in and work, you get paid for what you work and whatnot. So it's a little different, but. So any more discussion on that?
Thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate it very much.
It's been a challenge.
I do believe we have the dream team.
Yep.
So thank you guys, because you've been tasked with massive undertaking for sure.
Well, it's
Matt,
definitely, we're at a point where we have to reimagine the organization and paying tribute to where we've been, right? And sort of, our history and all the good people that have stood behind us. But the reality is that we have to look different in the future to continue to provide the level of service that our community pays for and deserves. So it does take a stretch on all of us to kind of rethink of, okay, what does it have to look like? It's not going to be the familiar, place where we see the chief driving on Main Street to get the mail. It's going to look different, and it is a grieving process. Greg, you're absolutely right. It is a grieving process, and all the things that have been expressed tonight are valid and real and good to think through and live out. But I do think we're on the track, like Matt said, where we retain as a board, we still retain the ability to set policies and direction and to hire the top person. And if we enter into a deal with Pendleton, if that is what works out and we get in and it isn't right, we have the ability to change that too. So, we still have control as a board. We don't have control of who works under that chief. We don't have control of that. But I think good people show themselves, and I think whoever we hire should be smart enough to see that. So.
hey, Matt, it's Ray.
Hey, go ahead, Ray.
You're the only one on
I-
the phone.
I guess we need to push. We need to push for a decision. I don't think we should wait till June, in the middle of June. I mean, again, we're working Andy out of contract. I mean, I would suggest maybe we need to have a meeting early June or something and formalize either adopt the IGA or move on, because it seems like we're going to be operating without anything here very soon,
So,
without a chief.
Well, I'm ready to vote as soon as you have a plan.
well, I was gonna say, are folks ready to vote? I mean, right now, we're operating under that's the model going forward, is that we're soliciting an IGA and we're gonna design an assistant chief to try to have some of that a local person here on staff to manage the day-to-day operations. That's where we're at.
No other changes?
Well, would he have the ability to hire someone in Pendleton to do the finances? Because at that point, the QuickBooks would just move to Pendleton.
Say that, you gotta say.
The IGA agreement that you have, would that give him the power to hire someone, because you said he would be doing the hiring, to hire someone in Pendleton to do the finances? Because at
Basically
that
your
point,
job,
well, anybody that would be doing.
know what you're doing.
Yeah,
Accounts
right.
payable.
So would that be moved? Would he have the power to move that?
So we have that position funded, that part-time position funded in the budget. And since the chief would hire that,
So then,
or they might delegate that to the assistant chief. I don't know. But that would.
well, I just mean like, and it's not necessarily my future that I'm looking out for. I'm concerned that moving your payables to Pendleton is just one step closer to satellite situation.
Well, we have broached that subject yet.
Okay.
So.
But I do see that happen. I mean,
There's risk involved in that.
it not necessarily a risk, but this person that we are hiring
Yeah,
could choose to do that.
yeah.
I mean, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
That's-
the reality.
Well, but we'd have to have a serious talk with him, because if we're gonna approve paying the bills, and we don't know what they are, because we don't see them, we don't understand them, we don't sign them, we don't do anything, I mean, we sign them, but we don't. But then we'd have to have a serious talk with him and say, wait a minute, you could do that, but we have to have total visibility. You know, we have to understand exactly what this is.
And to what Greg is saying, keep in mind that exists with an IGA. The IGA takes place at the board level.
Yeah.
It's not the chief.
Well, that part's not in the IGA.
Well, the other aspect is we need somebody at that desk to deal with clients walking in wanting a burn permit, thank you. Different off.
And that's, just like we wanna.
Yeah.
Just like we want an assistant chief of operations to work here. Okay, like, yes, we wanna have a person to work here. That's what we've designed.
Yeah.
You know,
I
they can
know.
hire somebody wherever they want, but as long as they're sitting there 4 hours a day or whatever it is, right?
Right.
So, but that's where we're at, Greg, is that's the best option that we can provide the rest of the board at this point. If the board's ready to vote on that, great. To Ray's point, I think we don't have a lot of time to drag this out much further, you know. Because especially if we push back our next meeting till the 25th of June, you know, we got 5 days till July 1, and you know,
I don't have a problem voting to move ahead with the IGA with Pendleton. I mean, I realize there's some wording and little bits of here and there, but I'm still okay with voting that way.
Well, I'd like to know who's gonna talk to the people that show up here, you know, the city people that have a question or want to use this room as a meeting place, which we've offered to the city, et cetera. I would like to know who's gonna answer the phones and these administrative things that the guy in Pendleton may say, well, my assistant will take care of that. And will they give him the authority to decide who does accounts payable and the rest? I'd like to know a little bit more about how it's gonna settle out once we get, I know your goal is to have the chief and administrative, or I call him an operations officer, but whatever you want to call him, okay? And then just forget everything else and just walk away and let them do that. Well, I'm not comfortable with that. I think you are too.
Well, I don't think we're walking away from that. Like, we have a part-time admin position in here. That's what we've agreed to moving forward. Whether Dave's running it or not, that's what we gave him, like, hire a part-time admin person. You need admin support, like, do that. We're not directing how that happens or who he's hiring.
Oh, shit.
But having that position staffed here, like, that's not part of the IGA. That's part of our org chart, if you wanna call that.
That's what we budgeted for.
That's what we budgeted for. That's our expectation. Who the next chief hires to be the admin staff is who the next chief hires to be the admin
That's right.
staff. But that position is here, in-house. Like, I don't see that changing. And if they do want to change that, then hey, make us a pitch and tell us why that's such a good idea. And maybe then the board would weigh in and say, yeah, we can agree to move this here, or no, we don't agree to do that. The position's gotta be here.
I have a quick question on that. Right now, we're paying, what, 36 an hour? What did we budget?
We budgeted
25?
I think that's right.
$36,000 a year. What we budgeted.
What does that even out to be?
Chris is gonna tell us.
So,
Well, with that
Per
answer,
month.
with that answer you just gave me, I'm ready to vote.
well, that's 3,000 a month.
3,000.
Which is for half-time, basically.
And that's what we've
Okay.
agreed to do.
Yeah, that's
right. So
I just didn't know if we were right now paying 36, but we only budgeted 15 for the next year, is what I was getting.
we budgeted for a halftime bet.
So if we budgeted 25 an hour, 3,000, and we only offered $10 an hour, we could do full-time versus half-time at 25 an hour.
I think it was.
So if we floated that position at 17, maybe we could get 30 hours and still spend our 3,000.
When we were speaking to the gal, I think her name is Stephanie at Express,
Okay,
25 was kind of like the basement for, I don't know what we're getting, what we're asking them, Jessica.
but right now we're paying 36,
And that 36, that money above the 25 goes to Express.
but we're dumping the
And
express.
taxes and everything else. I
Yeah.
mean, we're not,
So if we offered,
I think we're having two different conversations, and I'm
okay,
sorry, but I don't wanna
yep,
hash out that when that's already in the budget and we've already got.
Yeah,
Approved.
I agree.
basically, we've budgeted 3,000 a month,
Part-time admin.
part-time.
Yep. That's what we've
Part-time
done.
does not include
And that's
medical,
why it's 3,000 a month.
okay,
And so,
that's what I got what I wanted.
so are folks ready to vote? I know I've been ready to vote. But again, I'm not gonna push that unless folks are comfortable.
so if we vote, and we see this way that you guys have decided to write up the IGA, can we still change and massage that after the vote? I mean, right now, what we're just saying is that we are willing to move forward with Pendleton. Is IGA,
We're not,
and the details of that, we're gonna iron out.
yes, we're not adopting the IGA until we have it in a place where
We're all
Where-
kind of what we did before.
we mutually agree along with Pendleton that this is the one, this is the final draft. Everyone's happy. Now we're gonna implement that. No, we're still, and I don't know if we need a vote to continue to be on the path that we're on, but that's kind of the path that we've recommended going forward is to pursue this option.
Didn't we already approve an IGA with the?
Well, we approved the pursuit of an IGA with them.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
And so we're still pursuing that. But if we're not, if we're not in alignment with that pursuit now, then we need to know.
Well, I'm willing to give you permission to complete it.
I'm still okay with pursuing.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah, Ray?
Hey, so Pendleton's reviewed the IGA, right? Or the chief has.
The
IGA, the one that
It's
we've
their
drafted.
IGA with Pilot
It's
Rock.
their IGA with Pilot Rock, so yes.
Oh, okay.
There's
Okay.
very few modifications needed to that.
I know.
Okay. Okay. That never. Okay. I'll just withdraw. Thanks.
Okay. So. Yeah, I don't know that there is an action for us tonight other than like, yeah, get the IGA drafted up and see if that will work for them. And then, if we're all in agreement that we're in a good place, then we can do that on June 25th. And
I'm okay with
Yeah,
that.
that we can actually adopt it then, right?
we can adopt it then and hopefully that's not too much of a, as long as they could adopt it on their end and say, yeah, we can implement it on July 1st and I can have that conversation tomorrow too.
Well, we could meet earlier too.
Yeah, if we need to have a special meeting.
Yeah, we can have a special meeting. Yeah. We're flexible.
Sure.
Except on the 18th.
We're not flexible that day, yeah.
Too many are out.
Any more discussion on that? Are we in a good spot?
Good spot.
We have anything for the go of the order?
I don't know, but you think you had something else?
I'm going around the room.
Oh.
I'm good.
I actually do have a suggestion. So driving around, the Athena station still has an old faded sign on the front that says Athena Volunteer. You drive by Adams, it just looks like a vacant shed. There's no signage on it. I haven't been by Helix. Is there a sign that says Helix Fire Department out there?
Used to be. But
So
I
my
think it was on
suggestion
the-
is, I think we ought to approach the shop teacher, whether it's at Helix or at the Athena High School, and say, hey, would you be willing to take on a project with your students this fall to propose a design to us for signs for our station, and then, we would buy the materials and have their students create them. So we'd have EUFR, Athena station number, whatnot. I'm just throwing out an idea. And, EUFR, Adams station number, and Helix station number, and so that we have something. So it looks like something we're proud of. It looks like, people know what they are when they drive by and can attach our name, with a location, and each community can have a little pride that they have something that looks nice and is cared for. No, just an idea.
Woodworking.
I love the idea. I had no idea that Adams was a fire station until they had the yard sale. And I was like, well, I'll be darned. That's
There
what
it
that is. So, and as a marketer, you're speaking my language.
And it's a way of getting our schools involved too.
Depending on what material you want, the art class is the one that did the community center site.
Oh, no kidding.
We supplied the paint and the boards out of there and they did the painting on there.
We could even do a contest for the local citizens in all of our area to design whatever, and then,
Well,
we
have a logo.
but
We do have our own logo.
yeah,
So the design should incorporate that.
absolutely.
Here's our logo, you design the rest.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and maybe Helix does one in Helix and Athena does
Yeah.
the one,
Yeah,
well,
Helix
all
does Adams and Helix,
Yeah.
and Weston does
Yeah.
Weston and
And,
Athena.
we can decide if we want it screwed to the side of the building or want to put it in the ground with posts, It can be made out of metal, wood, but I think something to make them recognizable.
I
And
agree.
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
agree.
I agree.
so that was just my good of the word on that.
We tried that
It's
a
a
couple
great
of years ago.
My good of the order is probably, I don't know, this, the only place it really fits. this last few months, has been very challenging trying to navigate all of this stuff. Trying to remain objective, trying to, not get into, it's really easy to go down a lot of paths and trying to stay above this, what's, long-term, what's best. It's been challenging. I'm trying not to come across, cold. I'm just trying to be matter of fact and real about the situation that we're in. So with that, it's been very, very challenging. And it's 10:30 at night. At least that's what I got. So our board meeting went extremely long tonight. And this is the best board meeting I've been at in a long time. And I say that it's been challenging and it's hard to say some of the stuff that we're talking about. But it is so important that we are having these discussions in this format, in this forum, because that's what we're supposed to do. And I just have to say that this is well worth my time tonight to attend this meeting and have this discussion. And I think this discussion's been a long time coming. And I can't stress that enough, that this is so important what we're doing right now. And it sucks because there's a lot of things that are making people uncomfortable. I'm not comfortable with a lot of this stuff, but I know the reality is if we don't take action and fix some things and rise to the occasion and do this, then we're just kicking the can down the road and we're not going to be in any better place a year from now. In fact, we'll be in a worse place. So this has been tough, but this is, like I said, this is the best, most open board meeting I've been to, and I just appreciate that. I want to say thank you.
Well, this is what we've been working for as coming together, right? Not the context of what we're discussing, but this is what we have been wanting for a long time. And the openness, right? So I agree.
So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I moved to adjourn.
I wanna know what time it is.
I'll second it.
And seconded, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I got 22:30.